Welcome to Teaching Innovations at ISB, a series from the Center for Learning and Teaching Excellence. Professor Ashwini Chhatre, Associate Professor of Economics and Public Policy, wanted to explore how students' ideas and preconceived notions about what is sustainable changed when they were confronted with data. He used a simple everyday object, a teacup, to explore sustainability. Students were asked to compare cups made from clay, paper, plastic, ceramic, and steel across social, environmental, and economic dimensions through a simulation that was built in-house. As the students worked with data and faced real trade-offs, they saw how their choices changed. They discovered that sustainability rarely offered perfect win-win answers. Only thoughtful decisions with consequences they needed to understand and own.
So in class, when I tried to get this message across about the multiple dimensions of sustainability and trade-offs, or at least the difficulty of getting win-win-win, I started with the effort to link the micro to the macro. The sustainability outcomes that we are interested in are always at large scales, sort of global or national, at infant mortality, deforestation, and so on. It's not about one tree or one child. But actual behavior that needs to change for that outcome to be different at the macro scale cannot be understood just by understanding rates of deforestation or infant mortality rates. This connection between macro and micro was very difficult to accomplish in the classroom because people could get one but not the other, or could get the other but not the first one. It's very important because ultimately, each individual must do something differently for us to collectively get a different and better outcome. And I was not able to do it in class, and then I found a solution in the teacup, so to speak. My primary objective was to establish that there are multiple dimensions of sustainability. Each of them have different payoffs, different costs, different benefits, and that very often, perhaps far more often than not, you cannot have good outcomes on all dimensions. I focus on three because those are the ones that are most commonly understood: the social, the economic, and the environmental. And I talked about it, I made students read about it, I discussed it in class, and I felt that it was not getting through just by using anecdotes or cases. I felt that students needed to solve a problem and then see that they have failed to solve it, that it is not solvable. You cannot have win-win-win outcomes every time. The choice of a cup was brought to my attention by Piyush Goyal when he was the railway minister, and he announced that from now onwards all hot beverages in Indian Railways would be served in a kullad because the kullad was a more sustainable alternative. And I disagreed, and I thought, well, this could be put to the test and let's see how it works out. What are the different dimensions of sustainability when it comes to the use of a kullad? And it is very easy to imagine yourself drinking tea in a kullad and then making the leap to 26 million passengers every day using the kullad. And the impacts on social dimensions, economic dimensions, environmental dimensions, all of it became a lot easier to visualize.
So we primarily looked through each of the materials, the pros and cons, and how they're adding up or impacting overall the environmental or societal causes, apart from economic causes as well. So we did have some time to play around to see how we can maximize some materials and how that is impacting across these three factors, which if it would have been a static exercise, I don't think we would have learned what we've learned. And most surprisingly, I've had a lot of learnings today with this particular exercise, because traditionally we have a preset mindset about, how do you save paper to, to not cut down trees, or even how earthen pots or earthen cups primarily are, considered to be more environmentally friendly. But it was an eye-opener for us when we've actually got down into the facts. So I think sometimes it's really important for us to research through things before we actually take any initiatives to spread this through across.
I started with the cooler with this trigger, but I was still in search of a comparative perspective. Compared to what? Cooler is better compared to plastic. That is how it was presented, because plastic had already risen to the top of our I hate X list. Right? I hate plastics is now much more common than it was even 5 or 6 years ago. So compared to plastic, cooler is better. At ISB, sometime around the same time, I was interacting with the student body, GSB, and they were discussing a mandate for introducing plastic cups or ceramic cups and phasing out paper cups, because paper cups were worse for the environment than ceramic cup or plastic cups and multi-use plastic cups. Out of all of these conversations and research on cooler versus plastic, research on ceramic versus paper, there emerged a clear framework for comparing what is the best vessel if you wanted to achieve sustainable outcomes. Making sure that whatever I presented was grounded in knowledge that was well established, was credible, in terms of all the backward linkages all the way to the mining of materials that was used in the manufacturing of the vessel, and the frequency of use, so single use or multi-use, the use of energy after it has been used, and the entire life cycle analysis. Now, because I had multiple dimensions on which I could compare multiple different vessels, so paper versus ceramic versus multi-use plastic versus single-use plastic versus cooler versus any other such as steel, that students could come up with.
Yeah, so the simulation that we did for this course was definitely very helpful. I definitely felt like it added a certain amount of an interesting aspect to the whole thing, like in terms of being able to practically see how those numbers and those outcomes and outputs really changed when we put certain inputs and we chose our options. I definitely preferred this as compared to doing it in an analog format, because you just see it like a few times in the PDF, and then you just make kind of analysis which is not really done on many iterations. And I always prefer practical learning to this. Is always welcome. It kind of gets addictive too, because you want to kind of keep playing around with the numbers to reach like your goal or a good score overall. So you just treat it more like a game, and it became a lot of fun. So it was really exciting. So yeah.
While at a micro level, it may seem that actions that we take are small in nature, but at a macro level, they magnify and impact lives of millions of people around us. In current context, climate risk and sustainable finance are extremely critical, and the sustainability exercise that we undertook truly helped us in understanding the impact of our decisions over a longer duration of time frame.
And I formulated this into a simple 8 columns by 7 rows matrix. I shared it in the classroom, first purely as a discussion, to make them understand by implementing their own logic to evaluate outcomes on multiple dimensions. And there was vigorous debate in the classroom. And of course, there were value judgments about whether child labor was more valuable than saving trees. And it became very clear to me during that classroom discussion that the idea of trade-offs that I wanted students to learn came out naturally without my having to tell them about it. And once it come up, then I can use it as a teaching moment to expand on it, to bring out the nuances, the depth of the trade-offs involved, and to establish sustainability as an important challenge.
What strikes me is that, even when looking at something as simple as selecting a cup, can help us understand, bigger issues at hand. And in fact, I enjoyed the simulation. In fact, when I was doing the individual exercise, once I have the answers, I sort of confirm to myself that that is the right answer, the best solution. But only when you have a group setting and a simulation like this, then people start to question you, people start to challenge you, then you will start to think that maybe there are certain things that you have not really thought about. So in fact, I quite enjoy this simulation exercise, because really people are discussing, people are challenging one another. That really helps me learn a little bit more, rather than if I were to sit alone and listen to class, listen to the prof. So yeah, that's all I can say. Thank you.
So when I do it in the classroom without any prior exposure to the topics, the vessels, the questions, the values on different dimensions, there is a lot of opinionated judgments. People come into the classroom already convinced that the Kullad is the most sustainable alternative, and then they scramble around for nuggets of information, sometimes data, to prove that they are right. This is how students behave, this is how humans behave. We already have made up our minds based on some vague logic, and then we generally want to confirm our biases. I wanted to make sure that they have had opportunity to look at the numbers and reflect on those numbers. So what were the emission factors of a Kullad compared to stainless steel, in light of the number of times that vessel will be used, because the amount of energy that you need or the amount of emissions that are produced in making one stainless steel glass is very high compared to a Kullad. But a stainless steel glass can be used 5,000 times compared to a Kullad. These are not dimensions that are obvious when people have already made up their minds that stainless steel is better or Kullad is better. What now I am able to do is give them time to reflect on making up their minds and not come to the class with some half-baked, prejudiced notion of what is right and what is correct.
Having worked with the EPRs, mass producers and the recyclers, there are some inherent biases and heuristics that we give into. The simulation helped me understand the impact of all three pillars of social, economic and environment on the business and how to further apply it. This does refine the understanding and the application in day-to-day business to derive the best result for community and society as a whole.
So the simulation is part of a larger suite of lectures which have a teaching plan, and to that extent the simulation served a fantastic purpose even in its present form, because leading up to it there were readings and assignments and lectures on multiple aspects, and the simulation helped them bring all of those to bear upon a very real problem that they could easily wrap their mind around. What we were able to achieve is that the problem of the choice of a teacup or coffee cup allowed them to use the concepts that they had learned in class previously. And I don't think a simulation can do more than that. And then it is my job, and they did it for me, so it went really well. My job was to reinforce that learning. And of course, there were lectures that followed the simulation, which provided me with sort of more opportunity to deepen those lessons.